Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for showing up. I was convinced nobody was going to come to my session this morning. And so the fact that we actually have people in this room, I'm super pumped because I don't like talking to a screen. TEDx was actually a very difficult process for me. Seeing people and faces and eyes, that's what lights me up. So thank you for making the very long trek to the last room. And welcome. I'm really thrilled to talk about my favorite thing in the world, which is vision. But after the last session hearing Kevin, I'm like, okay, I think we can all go home. I think his message on perspective was absolutely perfect. And I'm like, all right, who needs me? Let's just go home and start doing some things in our businesses. But I think you'll find a few similarities here with what Kevin talked about. And quite honestly, I'm just going to share some stories. Because if you don't know this, our brains are wired. We're storytellers innately. And we tell ourselves stories that are true, and sometimes we tell ourselves stories that are untrue, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do and how it can hopefully relate to you in overcoming obstacles and leading your people and ultimately hopefully having stronger vision. So it's been a super long 2020. If it feels like 2020 was 5 years, I think that it was, and one day we'll just learn that we sped up time in months, but it actually was 5 years. A lot has happened in this last time, and I was thinking and joking with some other business leaders that back in 2019, a lot of us had this joke of like using 2020 as 2020 vision. And thinking back to 2019, like we thought that we knew what our 2020 vision was, and we thought that we had all these great plans for our businesses and our organizations, and we thought we knew where we were going, and we thought we had great vision, and this is what 2020 actually looked like. Our eyesight was halfway open, halfway closed, and so I am ready to go on vacation. Does anybody else want to go on vacation? Okay. Here's the deal. I already talked to your boss, or if you are the boss, you get time off. I'll pay you to come with me. I'm going to take you on a trip, and we're going here. We're going here. You don't know me. You don't know what type of trip. It could be Antarctica. It could be wherever, but who wants to go with me? Who wants to go with me here? Okay, I got like 3 or 4 hands. Okay, who's ready to go with me now? Okay, few more of you. Some of you are like, I don't know. What about here? Anybody ready to go with me now? All right, a few more. What about here? Okay, I got some hand waving in the back. All right, now who wants to go with me? Free trip, free trip. Okay, here's the deal. Perspective and vision is so important, and I'm going to talk about why that trip is so important. I love the idea of a captain. I have no idea how to captain a boat, but I think I've learned a few things over the last 16 years at ESP on how to captain an organization, how to captain a crew. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I've been with ESP for going on 16 years. And today I'm going to talk about how to captain your ship with stronger vision. And I'm going to use this idea of traveling the 7 C's. Okay, so I can't bring you to each of the 7 C's, but I'm going to use the 7 C's to focus on areas I have used innately. Sometimes I didn't know I was using them. Hopefully you can take some notes and bullet this out as I tell stories. And I'm going to use the 7 C's as a resource. Now, in terms of the 7 C's, we've heard a lot of C words this year, right? We've heard COVID, coronavirus, crappy, chaos. There's a lot of C words that we have used, but these 7 C words, I believe, are key as business leaders, as business owners, as employees of organizations, in order to take us from one place and take us around the world to another different location. These 7 C's are the most important. So what do? This is our mission statement. This is our purpose statement. And it's really important because at the very end, I want you to remember this vision statement. I'm going to share something super powerful, my biggest aha moment of 2020. Okay, so this is our vision statement and our mission statement. ESP exists. We exist to create transformative experiences for people with disabilities and their families, changing communities for the better. Changing communities for the better. I absolutely love my job. I absolutely love my job. And we do this in 3 different ways. And I'm going to tell you the 3 different ways and tell you stories of how these visions turned into reality. Java Joy spreads unmatched joy through moments of engagement with people of all abilities. Who experienced Java Joy this morning? Did you get it? Okay, so typically you would have gotten a big hug. Right now we're doing air hugs and high fives. It's not the same. We need 8 hugs a day in order to survive. Statistically, they recommend double that. So if you have children or a husband at home or a friend or just someone that you have been co-living with through all of this, make sure that you are touching somebody and hugging your children regularly. 8 hugs a day. It's so, so important, and that's what Java Joy is all about. I'm going to share a little bit more about that. 360 is our opportunity to enrich families and children of all abilities through our after-school program, our summer camp, and our family support. And Hooray is our future vision. It's a place of boundless adventure. It's 90 acres down Prince Avenue in Jackson County, where one day individuals in wheelchairs will get to sleep on the top bunk. So that is how we serve and what we do, but how in the world have I been involved for 16 years? I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. This is Martha Wiley. She founded ESP. She saw that individuals with special needs did not have the same opportunities as typical children. If you are a parent or an aunt or an uncle, raise your hand. Okay, so you can understand if you have a child that you love in your life, the extracurricular experiences that they have the opportunity to be a part of shape them. Whether it's dance or sports or whatever it is, the arts, those things shape who they are. Martha saw that during the summertime, kids with disabilities didn't have the same opportunities as typical children. And so she started this small organization called Extra Special People in Watkinsville and started with 8 kids and grew it to 20 kids. And when I walked in, there were 30 individuals with special needs serving in this building right here. This is one of my favorites, Ryan. He has an incredible story. I'll tell you about him sometime. He is a lot of my why. I absolutely fell in love with ESP. So I grew up in Atlanta, came to school, like many of you guys, to the University of Georgia, and I heard about ESP through my ex-boyfriend's sister. Okay, it was the only good contribution that my ex-boyfriend made, was introducing me to ESP, and he reminds me of that to this day. So I drove from Athens all the way to Watkinsville, and for an Atlanta girl, past cows and horses, and thought, where am I going? And walked into that building that you saw, and absolutely was captivated by this little tiny place in this little tiny city that was magical. And as an 18-year-old, I could not get enough of it, because when an individual in a wheelchair rolled through the front door or an individual with Down syndrome came through the door, it was as if their disability melted away and they were treated for who they are. And you see, disability crosses all economic backgrounds. It crosses all ages and genders and races. And there were people of all colors and all abilities in this one place enjoying such a beautiful thing. And I absolutely fell in love. But it was very quickly, I fell so in love that Martha Wiley, that very summer that I started back in 2005, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And 3 months later, October 8th, she passed away. And so the knowledge of the organization and the donor base and how things got done and the bus drivers and all the field trips and all the things went away with Martha. And so her husband and her daughter called me one day and said, in December of 2005, and said, Laura, do you want to run camp next summer? And I was 19 at the time, and I did what every other stupid 19-year-old would do. I said, yeah, I can run camp, sure. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and I think there's some real beauty in that, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so I entered as a 19-year-old, a sophomore in college. as the executive director of ESP, and now they cannot get rid of me. I absolutely love my job. And so as I took over, I was doling out medication, I was running summer camp, I was hiring people that were older than me, and they said, you can get a paycheck when you raise $50,000. We have a $50,000 deficit. We'll pay you $10 an hour whenever you can plan camp, get through camp, and make some profit on the other end. We'll start to pay you. So I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. So we did that, and somehow we made it through. We made it through 2006, and we made it through 2007, and we were scraping the barrel. And suddenly, people started finding out about ESP, and we're in that little 1,200 square foot building. And so part of my job in 2008 was planning camp, doing all the things. We had 60 kids at the time. We had 40 counselors, so managing 100 people, making sure that all of the diastats and G-tubes and seizure disorders and all of those things were managed. And again, I'm 21 or 22 at the time, and I'll never forget the summer of 2008. The thing that took up most of my time was picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, this is Laura. Welcome to ESP. How can I help?" And it was a mom of a child with autism who hadn't slept in I don't know how many years. "I just heard about ESP. I'm so excited to hear about ESP. When can I get my kid to camp?" And I would respond over and over and over again, "Welcome to the family. We're so happy to have you. I'll put you on the wait list. I'll put you on the wait list. I'll put you on the wait list," over and over and over again. And at the end of that summer, this is Josh. Josh, we called the Hulk, okay, because he would come into ESP, had Down syndrome. He'd walk through our doors and he'd just do this. And so we named him the Hulk. And Josh was on the wait list. He came to camp for the first 2 weeks of the summer, and the last 2 weeks he was on the wait list. Well, Josh's mom was a single mom, like many of our families. And Josh's mom worked at a manufacturing plant and lived in a county outside of Athens. And so when Josh's mom didn't have ESP, Josh stayed at home while mom went to work so she didn't lose her job. And at the end of that summer in July, the phone rang like it did a million times a day, and I picked up the phone, and it was the fire chief in Madison County. And he said, "Miss Laura, I hate to tell you, but we lost one of your campers today." You see, his mom went to work. Josh stayed at home. Josh needed to fix some lunch. Josh tried to fix some lunch, started a house fire, and lost his life in a house fire. In that moment, there's a lot of things we could have felt. It could have been guilt. He should have been at ESP. There's a lot of things that we felt. But what it did that day is it planted a seed of compassion that made me realize that there is a bigger need to be met. There's a bigger vision out there. And when I think about the Joshes, the Hulks of the world, there's another 2,000 kids in our area that could benefit from ESP's services. And what was the one thing that was holding us back? Was it money? Yeah, but really, you know what? The one thing that was holding us back, it was space. Because we were in a 1,200 square foot building and we couldn't fit one more body into the building. And so the first vision that I ever casted was a vision of a space, a 14,000 square foot building where any kid could come to ESP, that eliminated the waiting list. And yeah, it was going to cost about $3 million, but this was the vision, the first vision. And can anyone guess when we started that vision? We began that process in 2011. Who remembers what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010, right? Were people giving their money? No. People were holding on to their money. And so we decided to launch a $3 million campaign amidst a recession to build this building. And people said, "Laura, you cannot raise $3 million in Athens, Georgia in a recession where there are more nonprofits per capita than any other city in the United States. You can't do it." What was my response? Not "we can." Not, yes, we're going to do it to prove you wrong. My response was, well, you know what? If we raise $200,000, we'll serve more kids on the waiting list. If we raise $500,000, we'll serve more kids on the waiting list. If we raise $1 million, we will serve more kids on the waiting list. Our goal was $3 million in 3 years. And the first C that always should lead a vision is compassion. It always went back to Josh. It always went back to the 2,000 kids on the waiting list. And you're sitting there saying, well, I sell socks, Laura. It's not as easy to sell socks and have compassion as it is for kids with special needs. I challenge you to rethink your thinking. There's people out there that need socks. There's people out there that need to look good and feel great, cheeky peach. Compassion should always be the first step to a vision, because when things get hard, you will always go back to your why. And compassion has to be the leader and the first seat in anything that we do. We raised $4 million in 3 years. We didn't raise $3 million in 3 years. We raised $4 million in 3 years. And you know what? People wanted to be a part of something that's greater than themselves. And every single person that walked into that building to build the building felt the compassion of the vision. They understood what we were trying to build. And guess what? It wasn't Laura's vision. It wasn't Laura's vision. It was their vision. It was their vision. Even the construction workers felt like it was their vision. And that is the power of a really, really great mission. And then we acquired 70 acres out in Jackson County. This was a vision we never thought that we would ever. I told the owners of the property, I don't want to build an overnight camp. And they came back to me 2 and 3 times. And you know what? I went and talked to some of our families, and I had a parent tell me, my son has cerebral palsy. His brother's favorite thing about going to camp is sleeping on the top bunk. He's never had the opportunity to sleep on the top bunk. And so again, the compassion came. We called up our friends over at UGA School of Environmental Design and said, hey, we have this idea to build the country's first universally accessible camp on our camp property. And we'd love for you to work with Georgia Tech School of Architecture to build this camp property and to help us design it. And the dean of the School of Environmental Design said, you're not going to believe this, but about 2 weeks ago, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Georgia Tech to work on projects that better the state of Georgia. This is the perfect project. And so the next vision came, and it's still coming, for a camp property out in Jackson County where individuals of all abilities will have a boundless place of adventure. And then there was another family whose child had muscular dystrophy. The older brother grew up playing baseball on the other side of the fence, and their parents got to sit in the stands and cheer their kids on. And their other child, who is in a wheelchair, has never had the opportunity to do that. And so amidst all that's happening at ESP, we were introduced to the Miracle League. And the Miracle League is an opportunity, Frank alluded to it, where individuals of all abilities will have the opportunity to play ball and play on a play field and a ball field and a playground where everything is fully accessible. In December, we will break ground on the Miracle League. But you know what's consistent about all 3 of those things? Criticism. Laura, you're too young for a vision like that. Laura, you're not prepared for a vision like that. Laura, you can't raise $3 million in 3 years. Laura, you can't put the ball field right there. Laura, you can't build a camp. It's impossible to build a universally designed camp. Criticism is the second C. And I think what differentiates a leader from a manager is how they handle criticism. And sometimes you can take it and you can modify your vision and your plan, but sometimes you need to use criticism to make your vision stronger and better. It realigns the why. It helps you to go back to compassion and really decide whether or not the vision is accurate. The last vision I want to talk about before we go into the other C's is Java Joy. So right after we built our building, we were standing in the kitchen, and I had the opportunity to bring some business owners to ESP. Raise your hand if you've been to the new ESP building. Okay, that makes me happy to see lots of hands. And several of the business owners were telling me one thing in multiple different ways. They were saying, Laura, we love to give to ESP, and we think it's the right thing to do. And they were kind of embarrassed to tell me this. And they're like, but Laura, I have to be honest. One of the reasons we give to ESP is that it's really good for my people. They're coming into ESP and they're getting this experience in this culture, and then they're leaving ESP and they're coming back to the office and they're happier with the company that they work with. They're more joyful, and thus they're more productive. So it's kind of selfish why I'm giving to ESP. And I'm like, that's fine. Give however you want to give. But something popped in my head. It's like, what if there's companies out there that support us that can't come to us? And then the next day, I was talking to one of our ESP parents, and she was talking about how her particular adult had 4 different jobs. And that individual kept getting let go from her job because she wasn't quite fitting into the box of what that job responsibilities were. She was a little too happy. She was a little too extra. She was a little too social. She wasn't getting her job done. And I thought, gosh, 85% of adults with disabilities who want to work and can work are unemployed. 85%. Imagine if that was our unemployment statistics around the country. That's the reality for adults with disabilities who want to work and can't work, 85%. And so back to that compassion and then to the criticism, up popped the idea of Java Joy. And Java Joy is a mobile coffee cart that goes into businesses and organizations, providing a moment of engagement. You experienced it this morning, employing adults with disabilities while also providing a culture experience for companies, fulfilling multiple needs and teaching people how to engage people with disabilities. It takes extreme creativity to have a strong vision. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I've got to get out of the office, I've got to go away, I've got to go for a run in order to get in a creative space. But it's so important to have strong visions that are creative. And I think COVID has helped us with this. We as business leaders we've been forced to get creative. And if you're not naturally a creative person, I challenge you to sit with someone in your office who is. And even as someone who loves to be creative, sometimes sitting and giving the position of the creative director within your office is so empowering because you're challenging your people to think creatively. You're giving them the position to be creative. And with Java Joy, we've had to be creative. Through the COVID season, we've had to be creative. And one of the ways that we've had to be creative is in how to grow. I mentioned the 3 different ways, and I'm going to talk about how we're growing. But here's the thing. Any captain can steer. Anyone can get on a ship and steer, but great captains have to chart their course. And so after you have led with compassion, after you have dealt with criticism, it's so important that you chart strategically. I am not a charter by nature, but as the leader of our organization with growing multiple visions, it's been so important for me to learn how to strategically think and how to chart my course. Why? Because I'm leading a board of directors and I'm leading a group of volunteers and I'm leading my staff, and all of them need to be bought in to the vision at large. So here's how ESP is charting our course. Java Joy was in a mobile IT company called Barracuda in Atlanta. Barracuda is a company that is founded in the headquarters in San Francisco. It was this time last year. And we always knew that Java Joy would grow. We thought we would go to Atlanta, which we're going to in 2 weeks. We thought we would go to another part of Georgia, which we're going to in 3 weeks, and I'll tell you more about that. So we started this idea and this process of charting our course towards growth. What I didn't know is that this time last year in Barracuda, there would be a guy. And this guy went to 2 Ivy League schools. He bought and sold several IT companies in New York that went public. He experiences Java Joy with our Joyrista Colin. If you don't know Colin, you should know him. He gets a hug from Colin. He flies back to San Francisco where he lives. And Andrew calls me 3 days later and said, Laura, I have been in a lot of places, around a lot of people, have owned a lot of companies, and I cannot get Java Joy off my mind. San Francisco is moving so fast and is always looking down. San Francisco needs a Java Joy. Can we bring Java Joy to San Francisco? And I'm like, I think if I hadn't begun to chart the course and see the vision of Java Joy growing even in Atlanta, I would have said, heck no, maybe. But I said, absolutely, yes, we can make it happen. And so in December, we flew 5 Joyristas from Athens, Georgia, to San Francisco, California for their first ever business trip. And they had the opportunity to teach the 11 Joyristas that we hired in San Francisco how to be a Joyrista. And the Athens Joyristas wore a white apron, and the San Francisco Joyristas wore a brown apron, and at the very end of the week, we were in Airbnb corporate, in Lyft, in the Transamerica building, I mean, you name it, any big, important building in San Francisco, and it was awesome. But you know, the most awesome part was on Thursday night at the very end of launch week, when all the families piled into the room. And John, one of our Joyristas from San Francisco, gets up and he said, I've been fired from my job 6 times. And his job coach takes the mic and says, John was born to be a Joyrista. And then the Athens Joyristas take off the San Francisco Joyristas' brown aprons, and we have a white apron ceremony where they pass the white aprons, the graduation ceremony for our San Francisco Joyristas. So incredibly beautiful. And answering the call and charting the course is so important, showing up and being willing to say yes. And so now as we chart and we look at ESP in the future, we can see that every city there is a John. Every city there's a Colin. And we have the opportunity to show up for individuals of all abilities, to work on that 85% unemployment rate. And so as we chart, will we ever be in 5,000 cities? I don't know, probably not. But when we begin to chart, we begin to, what Kevin talked about this morning, we begin to change our perspective. And once we change our perspective and chart, beautiful things begin to happen. The moment you write it down on paper, things start happening. And so I want to challenge you today. What is that thing that kind of scares you? Write it down on paper, and I promise you, you're going to start seeing it come into fruition. And charting is such an important part of a vision. If you are an entrepreneur, if you are a visionary, you will see the vision, but your people need to see the vision. So earlier we talked about this trip that we all are so ready to go on, right? And there were like 4 of you that raised your hand when I showed this picture. Because here's the deal. Most of you don't know me. You don't know my background. You don't know where I'm going to take you. I could take you to Antarctica. Or you could just really not like me, and you'd be stuck on a boat with me. Most of our people in our organizations, we see the boat and the beautiful picture, but our people see this. People need to see a bigger picture. They need to be a part of something that is greater than themselves. The vision can't be the vision that is within our hearts and within our heads. We've got to show that vision and tell that vision and be enthusiasts for that vision. And we've got to help them to see themselves in the vision. Strong vision is the power of captaining the journey with a crew that sees the destination as if it's their own. Java Joy across the country is not Laura's vision. A 14,000 square foot building is not Laura's vision. It became a community vision. It became the vision of the parents and the kids and the donors and the volunteers, and anyone who wanted to be involved suddenly felt like it was their vision too. And so if you have a vision for your business, if you see yourself growing the next 5 years to this or the next 10 years to this, I challenge you to start talking about it. Start talking to your people about it. Because here's the deal. As long as it lives here and here, it's not going anywhere. The moment that people start envisioning the destination as their own destination, that is the power of a strong vision. And that's where you get something. And so here's my crew, and I'm so proud of them. One of them is back there, Nicole, who's my right-hand lady. But here's the deal. Going to San Francisco, taking ESP to Rome, Georgia, whatever we're going to do, providing a Miracle League, this is their vision. It's a part of who they are and the fabric of who they are. It's why they wake up every single day. It's not because Laura is telling them this is what we're going to do. It's because they believe that this is what we're going to do. And the way that they believe this is what we're going to do is through two different things. It's building a culture of celebration, is what I call it. Oftentimes as leaders, we don't celebrate until we get to the end, right? Because we're so focused on getting to the end. One more store, this number of sales, or whatever. And we forget to pay attention to the little journeys along the way where we get to stop and celebrate, and it builds momentum to celebrate the next part of the journey, which helps us to celebrate the next part of the journey. And so if you lead people or if you're just an employee, I want to challenge you to think about a culture of celebration, is what we call it at ESP. It is the feeling that you are being celebrated. You are celebrated for who you are. Small celebrations. Hey, somebody just delivered to my desk yesterday the civil designs for the Miracle League field. You better believe we had a dance party around ESP about that. They're civil designs. Only Frank Pittman gets pumped up about civil designs. We had a ball because you know what that meant? Yeah, it's not a groundbreaking ceremony. Yeah, it's not a kid on a field, but we're one step closer. And you know what's cool about it? The person who cleans the bathrooms or the person who changes a child in a wheelchair, they can get pumped up about those civil designs because I told them, guess what, guys? We're one step closer. In December, we get to break ground. And you know what it does for that person? It gives them a vision that their task, whatever it is, however menial they think it is a part of something bigger than themselves. And so a culture of celebration and a culture of coaching is so important to fulfill a vision. Because you know what? We've been working on the Miracle League field for 3 years. Some of you have read in the paper, we've gotten pushback on it. We had to move where our Miracle League field was going to be. We've had a mayor that hasn't been supportive. We've dealt with all kinds of criticism. And so through those criticisms, what we've had to do, we've had to celebrate the small moments, but we've also had to coach our people. And when I'm talking about leadership, this is something I'm super passionate about. If you and your business don't have a one-on-one structure where you coach your people on a regular basis, I challenge you to do it. That one-on-one connection with your people is so important. And so, as an example, if something's happening and we're not having a culture of celebration, we're not remembering the vision, we're not doing what we're supposed to do at ESP, at any time I can walk up to my 16 people and I can say, hey, let me coach you for a second. And that's a part of our culture. That's a part of who we are at ESP. And they take that feedback. They want that feedback. That ongoing coaching, not only you as a leader, you need to captain, but you need to be the coach. Put on the whistle, put on the hat, pretend you are the coach of your organization. It's so important, and people want to be coached. They want feedback. Don't wait for an annual feedback review or a semester, quarterly feedback review to give people input. They want it, and if it's given in a way of coaching and leading, people will respond. There's something that every single one of my employees say every single week in their one-on-one sessions. The leader says, how can I better support you? How can I better support you? And the employee says, what feedback do you have for me? What feedback do you have for me? Not, do you have any feedback, right? Because then that person can say yes or no. It is, what feedback do you have for me? And you know what that does? It creates a culture of coaching, a culture of celebration, because sometimes the feedback is really great, but your people are your most important part of your vision. Your people are your most important part of your vision, and they've got to see themselves as part of it. And so I'll end with this. You're on this journey. You're captaining this vision within your organization. You're selling socks, or you're changing the lives of kids with disabilities, and everything in between, and all of it is equally wonderful. And then something like this happens. Where does your vision go? Think back to January. Has your vision for your organization changed? Has it modified? Has it gone away? Strong vision can outweigh any storm. Can outweigh any storm. All captains appear to be good captains when the waters are still, right? But we know that if we were to sail from South Florida to Hawaii, at some point we would hit a storm. Okay, we've got to prepare ourselves for that. At some point we're going to hit a storm. It's the rough seas that make great captains. It's the rough seas that make great captains. How you respond in the storm is how you will grow a strong vision. How you respond in the storm is how you will grow a strong vision. And I believe the response to a storm is always and will forever be courage. Fear is a reaction, and courage is simply a decision. We had a choice at ESP when a lot of my colleagues were shutting their doors. We had a choice whether or not we were going to shut our doors and furlough our staff amidst COVID or continue on. And when I say continue on, it's like everything that we do is tangible. Everything that we do is touching people. Everything that we do is about relationships. And so we started thinking about all the things that we were going to do to keep our vision going. And we took a step back and we were like, you know what? We don't know what to do. We're going to call our families and figure out what in the world is going on in their lives right now. So we stopped everything that we were doing and we went back to the first C. Compassion. And every single member of my staff picked up the phone and called our families. And you know what we were hearing? Some of our families were experiencing food insecurity for the first time in their lives. They worked hourly jobs, and now they were 24-hour caretakers for kids with severe autism, individuals that needed to be cared for 24 hours a day. And so as we heard these stories, we went back to the number 1C, and we thought, gosh, we don't deliver food. We're not in the business of delivering food. There's a lot of other organizations that do that. We don't know how to do that. But we picked up the phone and we called Epting Events, and we began delivering. We delivered 10,000 meals to families who needed them throughout the state of Georgia. We did parades where families would, their one thing during the week would be to get in the car and put their kid in the car, and we danced like crazy, and we had our masks on, and we had loud music, and every child's name was celebrated as they drove through the ESP parking lot. And we did virtual counseling, and we changed and we modified. And when it came to camp, we had the decision, do we close or do we do camp? And so we had 6 different camps in 6 different locations. We fed 5,000 kids this summer through summer camp. We could have reacted and shut down, and it would have been okay. No one would have faulted us for that. But we were weighing and listening to those 600 families, and there was a risk to run camp this summer, and there was also a risk not to run camp this summer because our families were struggling and saying, please do it. And so we figured out a safe way to serve our families because compassion led the new vision. And the vision didn't stop because it was led by compassion. Fear is a reaction, and courage is simply a decision. And if we want to have strong visions for our people, maybe you're a business owner of one, whatever it is, in our families as parents, we have to be courageous in order to have strong visions. And so I mentioned something about our mission statement. And this is where I'm going to wrap up, and then if you guys have questions, I would love to answer some. I had the biggest aha moment of my entire career in April of this year. And as we were charting the course for the next few years, taking some time through COVID to look at the next several years, we decided to look at our vision and mission statement. And so our vision statement from 2016 to 2020 was this: ESP exists to create transformative experiences for people with disabilities and their families, changing communities for the better. That was our vision statement. Our mission statement was something totally different. A vision is something that is very difficult to obtain, right? A vision statement you learn in business is something that you are reaching for, that's far out there, that's going to take many, many years to achieve, if even that. And I stood there on our whiteboard and I looked at our vision statement and I was like, we are doing that. We are doing that. When we wrote that in 2016, it felt impossible. And over the last 4 years, we've gone to San Francisco. And in 2 weeks, we'll be in Atlanta with Java Joy. And in 3 weeks, we'll be in Rome, Georgia, with not only Java Joy, but with our 360 programs as well. And because of COVID, we now have the opportunity to go into other cities with our 360 program. We are changing communities for the better. Not one community, but multiple communities. And I never thought it was possible. That is the power of a strong vision. I didn't even know we were doing it. It's on our wall. I didn't even know we were doing it. We were focused on the C's. We led with compassion. We dealt with criticism and didn't let it stop our vision. We were creative. We charted our course so that everybody knew where we were going. There's a culture of coaching and celebration. And last but certainly not least, courage. Stepping forward when no one else is doing it, because compassion is the leader of the vision. I want to encourage you guys. What is that thing that you have always wanted to do? That you have the stretch goal, the vision. The thing about a vision is you are over here on this island, you're in Florida, and Hawaii is way over there. It's not a true vision unless it feels very, very far away. I want to encourage you to write it down. Write down what that vision is. Maybe it's another store. Maybe it's another staff member. Maybe it's that you don't want to be in your job anymore and you want a different one. But whatever that vision is, there is power in writing it down. There is power in stepping forward in courage. And I want to encourage you today to, if you don't remember any of the 7 C's, remember courage. I think our community, I think our world needs courageous leaders right now. They need people who are not just responding, but people who are deciding to move forward in courage. So thank you guys so much for the opportunity to speak today. It's such a joy to be here. I'm just thankful a couple people showed up, to be totally honest. I was going to go to another class if no one made the trek over here. If there is anything that I can ever do to support you, one of my favorite things is sitting down with business leaders and helping them to see vision in the future for their own business, for their own organizations. And last, if you have anyone that could benefit from ESP, if there's someone in your life that could benefit from ESP, I want to encourage you to tell them about us. Let us serve them. Let us support them. And at the end of the day, when you're in Publix or the Mexican restaurant, and if you see someone with a different ability, I want to challenge you to look at them a little bit different. Look at them as a joyrista for the goodness that they bring to the world. Say hello to them. Look at them in the eyes. We at ESP are really trying to change the way that people see people with developmental disabilities. And I wouldn't do my job justice if I didn't encourage all of you guys to lean in and engage with people of all abilities. So thank you again for your time. I think my time is up, but we may have a chance for 1 or 2 questions if anyone's got one. Yes?
Do you ever use volunteers from the community to
Every single day. Yes. I'm going to pay him for that question later. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've got 3 big events. We have people in this room that have jumped out of airplanes for us. We've got trash picker-uppers, and we've got people that have jumped out of airplanes. So, and everything in between. You can become a fan club member by donating monthly, and that goes to our annual support to help fund scholarships for those that can't afford ESP services. But absolutely, if you've never been to ESP, I want to challenge you, just come for a tour. It'll make your day better. We'll celebrate you. Come for a tour. You should be able to have my email through the access through the summit. Shoot me an email and let me give you a tour. It'll be the best morning that you have. We'll give you some Java Joy coffee. But yeah, the building is pretty remarkable. They said, we don't build beautiful things for people. Parents said, they don't build beautiful things for people with disabilities. And we said, yeah, they do. And our building won a Georgia Architectural Award. So I just encourage you guys to come out and see it. It's a beautiful experience. This is my time up. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Appreciate it.